आजच्या या वेबिनारचं सर्व आयोजन आमच्या वनराई फाउंडेशनचे सेक्रेटरी निलेश खांडेकर, उपाध्यक्ष अजय पाटील आणि एव्हीआय फाउंडेशनचे डॉक्टर जेरिल बानाईत, आमच्या वनराई फाउंडेशनचे प्रदीप राठी आणि जतीन घिया या सर्व तरुण मंडळींनी अतिशय चांगल्या पद्धतीने आयोजित करण्याचा प्रयत्न केलेला आहे. विषय त्यांनी स्वतः निवडलेला आहे आणि वन आणि जमीन या संदर्भामध्ये फॉरेस्ट अँड लँड या संदर्भातला विषय अतिशय महत्वाचा विषय असं मी समजतो. एन्व्हायरमेंटच्या दृष्टीने आपल्या देशाचं एकंदरीत क्षेत्रफळ 329 मिलियन हेक्टर आहे. बरोबर. आणि यातली अजूनही 1/3 जमीन ही पडीक अवस्थेमध्ये आहे असं वेस्टलँड डेव्हलपमेंट अथॉरिटीचा रिपोर्ट आहे. आणि आपण ज्या भागामधून आलेला आहात, मी सर्व प्रेक्षकांना सांगू इच्छितो की फार कमी लोक राजकारणामध्ये ज्या कमिटमेंट्सनी येतात त्यामध्ये सुरेशजींचं नाव फार मोठं आहे. महाराष्ट्रातल्या ज्या भागामधून ते येतात, कोकणातून, त्या कोकणाने या देशाला फार मोठे नेते दिलेले आहेत, विचारवंत दिलेले आहेत. उदाहरणार्थ विनोबा भावेंसारखा माणूस, विनोबा ऋषितुल्य माणूस ज्याला आपण म्हणू, तो ऋषितुल्य संत ही कोकणाची देण आहे या देशाला. आणि आंतरराष्ट्रीय म्हणजे ज्या काळामध्ये कम्युनिस्ट जे करू शकले नाही, ज्यावेळी संपूर्ण जगामध्ये एक कम्युनिझमचा फार मोठा पगडा होता, त्या काळामध्ये जे विनोबा भावेंनी करून दाखवलं जगामध्ये, जगाला म्हणजे थकीत करणारं काम होतं. लोकांनी आपली जमीन अर्पण करावी, भूदानामध्ये द्यावी, एक आगळं वेगळं चित्र या देशामध्ये निर्माण करणारे विनोबा भावे तिथे आहेत. बॅरिस्टर नागपै तिथे, साने गुरुजी तिथे आहेत. साने गुरुजी ज्यांनी आम्हाला आमच्या बालपणी आमच्यावर संस्कार दिले ते साने गुरुजी तिथे आहेत. तिथे नाथपै आहेत, तिथले मधुदंडवते आहेत. आम्हाला विदर्भाला जे मोठे साहित्यिक मिळाले, भाऊसाहेब माडखोलकर, गत्रम माडखोलकर, ही कोकणाची देण आहे आमच्या विदर्भाला. तशीच या देशाच्या एकंदरीत राजकारणामध्ये सुरेश प्रभू ही फार मोठी देणगी आहे. स्वतःबद्दल कधीही न बोलणारे, परंतु आपल्या कामाच्या प्रती अतिशय जागरूक आणि संवेदनशील असणारा असा हा माणूस आहे. आणि तो या देशाला नेता म्हणून मिळाला. त्यांचं कार्य अतिशय प्रचंड आहे. नद्या जोडणीचं काम असो किंवा अर्थशास्त्राच्या संदर्भातलं त्यांचं ज्ञान असो, हे खरोखर अतिशय महत्वाचं काम त्यांनी केलेलं आहे. रेल्वे मंत्री असताना कदाचित त्यांना आवडेल की नाही मला माहित नाही, परंतु ते रेल्वे मंत्री असताना काही ऍक्सिडेंट झाले. एक दिवस व्यथित करणारा त्यांचा फोन आला. ते म्हणाले की मला असं वाटते की आपण कुठेतरी जबाबदार आहोत ऍक्सिडेंटला, आणि म्हणून मला पुष्कळदा असं वाटते की आपण सोडून दिलं पाहिजे, परंतु पंतप्रधान नरेंद्र मोदी यांनी जी जबाबदारी माझ्यावर दिलेली आहे यातून काहीतरी मार्ग काढण्याचा मी प्रयत्न करेन. आणि अशा पद्धतीने एक संवेदनशील माणूस, लाल बहादूर शास्त्री नंतर रेल्वेचा ऍक्सिडेंट झाल्यानंतर आपण राजीनामा द्यावा अशी भावना व्यक्त करणारा संवेदनशील माणूस, भाऊक माणूस राजकारणामध्ये आहे. आणि आपली एक वेगळी छाप त्यांनी राजकारणामध्ये सोडलेली आहे. आम्हाला तुमचा खरोखर सुरेशजी फार मनापासून अभिमान आहे. वी वेलकम यू हार्टली. आणि आज आमच्या इथे जे नवीन तरुण मुलं आहेत, विशेष करून डॉक्टर जेरिल बानाईत, जतीन घिया आणि निलेश खांडेकर, प्रदीप राठी, हे आपल्याला काही प्रश्न विचारतील. या तरुण पिढीचेच प्रश्न मी त्यांना सांगितलं, मी असेल किंवा सुरेश प्रभूजी असतील, आम्ही आमच्या परीनं काम करत आलो आहे. आणि आमचं तर रामनाम सत्य चांगलं होऊन जाईल. अजूनही निसर्ग तेवढा मेहरबान आहे. परंतु तुमच्या पिढीच्या समोर जे प्रश्न आहेत त्या संदर्भात अतिशय चांगल्या पद्धतीनं उत्तर देण्यासाठी एक सक्षम व्यक्ती आज इथे आहे. मी तुम्हाला जेरिल, जतीन आणि निलेश तुम्हाला विनंती करतो, प्रदीप, की तुम्ही कुठेतरी त्या प्रश्नांना सुरुवात करा. आणि सुरेश प्रभूंचं मार्गदर्शन हे आज आपल्यासाठी मेजवानी आहे, त्याचं आम्ही सर्व स्वागत करतो.
थँक्यू
गांधी साहेब. पहिल्यांदा तुम्हाला जस्ट 1 मिनिट, आय वॉन्ट टू थँक गांधी साहेब, तुम्हाला मनापासून धन्यवाद देतो. तुमच्यासारखे ज्येष्ठ मंडळींचं प्रेम, मार्गदर्शन, आशीर्वाद मला मिळाले हे मला वाटतं माझा सगळ्यात मोठा ठेवा आहे. आयुष्यामध्ये फार काय कमवलं नाही, पण जे काय कमवलं ते तुमच्यासारखी माणसांची मैत्री. तुम्हाला खूप खूप धन्यवाद देतो. आणि तुम्ही जो विश्वास दाखवला त्या विश्वासाला ध्यानात लक्षात ठेवून पुढचं काम करेन याची तुम्हाला ग्वाही देतो. धन्यवाद. प्लीज गो हेड, प्लीज गो हेड.
Thank you, Dr. Gandhiji. You introduced Mr. Prabhu so well, and you covered each and every aspect of his work and his life. And I don't think there could have been a better way to describe what Mr. Prabhuji has done and contributed for our country. And we really thank you, Mr. Prabhuji, that you graced this occasion and gave us an opportunity to host you. And you will be sharing your ideas and thoughts with us. We are really very overwhelmed, and we want to thank you from our bottom of our hearts. So to begin with, I would want to ask you that there are the majority percent of land that we have in our country or for world per se is covered by forest, some kind of forest and trees. But still there is a national demand or a global demand for afforestation and conservation of forest. What, according to you, might be the reason for this global demand for afforestation and conservation of forest when there is so much of land which is covered by forest already?
No, if you look at it, we think there is too much of forest. If you go back some years ago, there was the forest that is left today is just 20% of what we had in the past. What is forest actually? What is the desert? What is the river? What are these big mountains? See, they are all part of the creation of nature. Each one of them has been created by nature with a particular purpose.
Correct.
When we have a particular land use, that is a desert also serves a very useful purpose. Forest, rivers, mountains, oceans. Suppose it is now proved beyond doubt that whenever you change land use pattern, that is the land use that was intended by the nature, when you change it, like for example, if you try to convert desert into a forest, it will have very adverse consequences. In fact, in Rajasthan, when we wanted to take the water to Rajasthan, because it's part of the desert area of Rajasthan, it had some serious implications. The salinity increased, the land got degraded, because the land was not meant to be what we want to convert it to. So land use change is one of the reasons why there are greenhouse gas emissions, which in turn cause climate change. So whenever you want to change the nature's intended land use to something else, it is going to have adverse consequences. Now you ask a very valid question. What about a forest? Why we need so much of forest? Forest serve a lot of useful purposes. Number one, they are the carbon sinks of the world. Whatever carbon is emitted into the environment, they absorb it and emit oxygen. So it serves two purposes, but basically it absorbs the carbon. So they are carbon sinks. Number two, forests are the home to biodiversity. If you don't have forest, biodiversity will be lost. The biodiversity is a very, very complex integrated ecosystem. If, for example, nowadays, of course, new technology has come, but if you recall, you are too young, when me and Girish Bhai were youngsters, you are dealing Diwali time, we'll put this lighting. Even if one bulb goes off the light, the whole chain will not function. This was the whole time. Now new technology has come, so we can everything function. Ecosystem is like that. If you disturb something, it is going to affect the entire biodiversity ecosystem. So forests are the home to biodiversity. When you destroy forest, you are destroying biodiversity. Then the forest, that is something which we must understand, very important. The forests are responsible for conservation of soil. Forests are home to sources of fresh water. So when you get rid of forest, you are actually endangering the entire underlying and downstream ecosystem. So after some time, the desertification will start. The desertification, as I said, desert was already there. The nature had intended some desert. But the desertification process, which is a new phenomena, started because of human action, deforestation, will lead to desertification also. Now the other question, I'm sure you have in mind, why not convert entire forest into agriculture, for example?
Yes.
You must understand that agriculture cannot survive without forest.
Correct.
Agriculture, about almost 45% of the global agriculture production happens because of pollination. When the insects, the birds, the different kind of species, they carry a female part of that to male part of the, and that causes creation of food chains. They make flowers, fruits, everything available. So if you get rid of forest, water, soil, and this pollination process also will get affected. So even agriculture will get affected. So there is a relationship between agriculture and forest. So we cannot live without food, and agriculture provides us food. Agriculture cannot be carried out without water, and water is available because of the source of water. Ultimately, somewhere is because of forest. So forest is a very important insurance against our extinction from this planet. As it is, we are lost more than, there's the one evidence, first time somebody made the tabulation. The biodiversity that we have lost, terrestrial biodiversity, is probably more than 80%. The marine biodiversity, which is surviving, is still there luckily, not as much lost. But where did this terrestrial biodiversity was housed, which we lost? This was housed in forest. Another thing, the forests are home to wildlife. And the wildlife, where did it come from? It's a process of evolution. You and me were also animals some time ago, some millions of years ago. But our ancestors are animals. So if animals go, the ecosystem goes, you and me will also go. So I think for human beings' own survival, the forest play a very critical role. Another thing, forest provide you with source of very precious medicine. Many of these medicinal plants are located in forest. Even you take allopathic medicine, they have their origin somewhere in these medicinal plants. So ultimately, the forests are so important. So therefore, we need more forest. Incidentally, you ask a very valid point. In fact, the world forest cover is something like 35% only now. It's not something bigger than that. In fact, in India, it is 23.8%. And India wanted to have, as per our first forest policy, more forest up to 33% of the land mass. Right. In fact, India's first forest policy, which was made during the British time, they said, what is the first forest policy? We'll clear the forest so that we can construct or we can make that land available for cash crops like tea and coffee. So that first forest policy was not forest policy, it was anti-forest policy. Then you clear the forest. Even in Vidarbha, you had such a, one of the most precious, invaluable forests are in Vidarbha. In fact, the central India is the heart of India. And the central India had forest. So this is like forest is heart of our entire ecosystem. So they were there in central India. So I think we must keep this in mind. And I am very thankful, Dr. Jaril, for asking this question. And I don't know whether you're a medical doctor or you're a PhD. If you're a medical doctor, you can understand that to cure a patient,
yes,
you have to give medicine. Medicine will be available in forest.
Correct.
But cure the ecosystem, we need forest. So this is something I just wanted to put that into perspective.
Correct, sir.
Again, sorry, one more point. There is a difference between forest and planted plants. If you do plantation, it is not forest. I should give an example when I was a forest minister, way back in 1998, 22 years ago. It is like, I'll tell you what example I used to give. People may say that I will cut some trees. If I cut one tree, this is actually as per the Forest Conservation Act. Then you have to plant 4 more trees as compensatory afforestation. So people would say it's a good idea. If you cut one tree, then you get 4. So more than 4 times of the tree that you cut. But I used to give the example that if you tell a child that what is your mother? What is mother? Mother is a woman. So I'll tell a child that I'll take your mother away, but I'll give 4 women instead. So I'll take one of your mother, but I'll give 4 other women. Will the child agree? So same thing is with forest. When you cut down the virgin forest, the land is not, then you can plant 4 more trees, but that's a planted forest. We need virgin, good forest, which is gone, and only 35% is left. And in that also, the hotspots of biodiversity, mega biodiversity areas of the world are very few, in which India incidentally is one of them. So we should be lucky that we have some good forest and good mega biodiversity. That's an insurance against future extinction of human beings and other species. Sorry, I gave a long answer.
No, correct, sir. I mean, some of your words were really very enlightening. The word which you used is insurance, that the forests are insurance for our good health. And I strongly, as an allopathic doctor, as an MBBS doctor, I truly believe that to prevent a disease, we need forest rather than curing a disease. So the insurance for human survival is forest is a very apt answer, or what I would say a very appreciable answer from a forest minister and an environment minister. Also, you said that we need forest for soil, for water, for oxygen. That means the primary importance or the dependence of human survival is on forest itself. And you also mentioned about clearing out of forest and then planting new trees, or having farming or agriculture. And the subsidiary question which Mr. Jatin is going to ask is about agriculture. That why do we require so much, why farming and agriculture is so important? Mr. Jatin, kindly go ahead and ask the second question.
Thank you, Daryl sir. First of all, good evening, Suresh sir. It's an extreme pleasure to have a green talk with you. It was like a dream come true for me to have a discussion with you. Thank you so much for coming. I would directly hit with the question, sir. India is mainly an agrarian economy. Almost it has employed about 50% of Indian workforce and contributed around 17 to 18% of total GDP to the Indian economy. As per the records, we say that India is the largest producer of pulses, rice, wheat, spices, everything. So considering this thing, then agriculture should have been the most profitable and the most prosperous sector of our Indian economy. And the persons working in that sector, like agriculture, like farmers, they should have been the most successful people, most rich people in the India. My question is that we clearly don't see that happening. Agriculture still is an overlooked sector, and farmers are still committing suicide, especially in Vidarbha. Do you think, sir, what deforestation, what is happening here, is responsible for farmer suicides, or an overall thing, agriculture is getting impacted due to deforestation, and that's why the farmers are committing suicide? Please enlighten us, sir.
Thank you very much. You ask a very pertinent question. Let us put it into perspective. India has the second largest arable area in the world after the United States, second largest. So agriculture, and therefore we are the land of agriculture, land of farmers, because so much of arable area available. 35 agro region, agro-climatic zones, 35. So different climates can be grown. So we can grow apples in Himalayas, and we can also grow rice in Kerala. So this is very diverse. Agro diversity in India is also great, tremendous. Now you ask me some questions, so let us divide it into 2 parts.
Okay.
One is agriculture and economy. That is one part. That is the one part. The second part is agriculture and environment, and agriculture and related to that. See, let me explain to you. Firstly, the climate change, which is rising, it is becoming now more and more serious, is because of, and the result of that is temperatures going up. Also, the unseasonal, unpredictable behavior of nature, which is also cause of climate change. But the biggest enemy of a farmer would be the nature itself. Farming depends on nature. So we have large irrigated area. Even irrigation to some extent will depend on nature, because if there is no rain, there is no snow, how will you get water into your irrigation system? But most of our land, agriculture in India, though we have arable area is large, is mostly rain-fed, mostly dependent on nature. And therefore, if that is dependent on nature, the climatic changes happen the way they are happening today is going to affect agriculture production. The farmers will be the biggest sufferer. And therefore, one thing that we must make sure for farmer, because farmer is putting hard labor, he's working, his entire family is working in the field. So at least we can do one thing is not bring in this extraneous changes into his agriculture, like changing the weather pattern because of our own human actions. And that is causing climate change. That is one thing we can do. So this is for definitely, if the temperature goes beyond 2 degrees centigrade, this is what the Paris Accord is now hoping and targeting. We have as compared to the pre-industrial evolution temperature, if it goes beyond 2 degrees centigrade, probably agriculture itself will be the worst effect. The other effect on climate change agriculture is too much of unseasonal rains, torrential weather which is affecting the entire human system. That is also affecting agriculture adversely. So this is one part of that. Second part is the farmer suicide, partly responsible because of climate change also, but also because agriculture in India should be made economically viable. How do you make agriculture economically viable? When somebody is running a small scale industry, he studies the market, he finds out a niche market for his products, and he sells it directly to the buyer. He has ability to increase the price, decrease the price depending upon the market condition. Market is the most important place where farmer can make money, because he can put hard work. That is the cost. His labor cost, he's borrowing money for plowing the field, he's borrowing money to buy seeds, for fertilizer, for insecticide. All that is cost. But when you only sells product in a market, you'll get it. So market is something for farmer is very important. Prime Minister Modi, the recent changes which have become controversial, but actually speaking, they are an answer to farmers' problem, because if farmer can sell his product directly into the market at a price that he thinks is reasonable and commensurate with his efforts, farmer will not commit suicide because he will become profitable. In fact, worldwide, farmers have the right of their own choosing as to what to sell. Of course, government has to support. The minimum support price has to be guaranteed so that it gives him a comfort level that if at least my cost will be recovered. That's why that has to be there. But we must open up the market. Number two, you correctly mentioned that India is the largest producer of fruit, second largest producer of vegetables, and largest producer of milk, second largest producer of fruits, vegetables, and many others. How much of it is get processed? If we can process it, the farmer will get better price. Let us take a good example. Now there may be aberrations. Now there are aberrations actually. But the whole concept of sugar cooperative was a fantastic concept, because farmer was selling his sugar cane to a sugar factory, but he was not paid only for sugar cane. He was paid for sugar, the value-added product that came from processing of sugar cane. Then the sugar factories diversified. The farmer was getting money for the power that was generated out of the bagasse. The farmer was getting money for the alcohol that was made out of by the sugar factory through Conosis or something. Now, if we process the agriculture product, the farmer will get better price, like say onions in Nasik. Unfortunately, prices go up, the government will be in control. So farmer doesn't get money. He cannot store it because there is no storage facility. He cannot process it because there is no processing facility. In fact, when I was a railway minister from CSR of Container Corporation of India, I had started a processing center in Lasalgaon only to help farmers. So we have to work on food processing. We have to work on getting farmers access to market. We have to provide insurance cover to the farmers, because it's one of the highest risk business farmer undertakes. He always looks up to the God as well as to the nature. If the rain is going to come, and if rain has come, too much rain comes,
Correct.
Whether in Konkan, for example, because Girish Bhai mentioned, in Konkan, the mango orchard owners, if there is, the winter is delayed, they have a problem because flowering doesn't happen. If the winter happens in right time, and then there is suddenly overcast sky, then the flowering goes away. The mango, if there is the rain, mango. So all these different vagaries of nature affect the farmer. So insurance is also very important. So I think if you give all this, market, processing, insurance, proper infrastructure for the farmers, agriculture will become profitable activity. Today, 14% of GDP comes from farmers, only 14% agriculture, which has come down from almost 60-65% over a period of time. But the number of people who are dependent on farming is even today about 60%. So just imagine 14% of population, 14% of the income is shared by 60% of the population, and remaining 86% of the income is shared by the 40% of people. And that's why farmers are poor, because they share very small income, though their number is very large.
Correct. Right.
It's
Thank
a
you so much, sir.
discrepancy in the number of farmers who are sharing a large, large number of farmers are sharing just small chunk of money, and there is a large number of people who are sharing a lot of other half of the money. And as you said, that there should be open markets, there should be food processing units, there should be infrastructure, which should be, and insurance most importantly, which should be provided to the farmers for a better coming future for our farmers. As we see, the young generation is not indulging into farming process anymore, or the percentage has reduced down, because we see there is a lot of difficulty in the farming in today's world. And as per your comments and suggestions, if there are more infrastructure for the farmers, I think this will be one of the most leading industries in the coming future for India. The third question, which is coming up, is also related to environment and farming. Mr. Nilesh Khandekar ji would ask.
Thank you, Jeril. Sir, good evening. As we all know that you were Union Cabinet Minister for Environment and Forest. That time you were handling in Prevention and Control of Pollution Board. Also, you were instrumental in preparation of a comprehensive National Environment Action Plan. So, sir, my question is, what are the current environmental and farming policies in India, and what changes should be proposed?
We need many steps. But so I'll tell you, if you look at the countries where the environment awareness is highest, the environment compliance is also the highest. So awareness is very important. People must protect it themselves. I'll tell you something which we are launching a program, and I think Vandrai Foundation and all of you youngsters can join into that. See, of course, what you're asking me is a very broad question. What needs to be done? We have to do many things, because there's a land-based pollution, water-based pollution, air pollution. So many things have to be done. Transportation has to change. Industrial activities also must make sure that there's a zero emissions as well as zero discharge into the water bodies. All of that is necessary. But what we are launching therefore is water, the most important aspect of environment. Now there are water bodies. The water bodies go away, we lose everything that we have. Water bodies also protect the underground water recharge and many other things. So how do you protect water bodies? Every village has some water body. There may be well, there may be a stream, there may be a pond, something will be there, or a river. Suppose if we educate the people, that awareness part, and every village, you create one person who will try to protect that water body. Protect means by talking to people. He cannot wear an army uniform and protect it. But he will go to people and explain to them, if you lose this, everything will be lost. And there are very good examples. When I started this program, all India basis, so many good people have come forward, how they have done. Some people have recharged the river. It's shocking in Punjab. But I'll come to it later. So we are starting a program that every village there will be one volunteer, and name we are giving is Nisarga Rakshak, because ultimately water body depends on nature. So Nisarga Rakshak. And to create that awareness and to do it. So ultimately our idea would be that every village must have one Nisarga Rakshak. So about 7.5 lakh villages, you must have at least, each one of them must have a Nisarga Rakshak. How will do it? Say your organization. You'll have so many members, and your objective is doing. I know Girish Bhai doing for so many of these Vandrai Foundation. So you can take responsibility for say Vidarbha, and then you can appoint for every district some organization. Then district can organize somebody for the taluka level. From taluka will go to the village, and we can create them. So then what we'll do is we'll give them training. So to train them for every say 100 villages or something, we can have 1 or 10 villages. We can have one Nisarga Shikshak to give him training, and not some high-tech training, very simple training, which can understand how to protect, what is to be done, what is the relationship. So the Nisarga Shikshak will be given training. I have been appointed recently a founding chancellor of a university called Vishuddha University in Haryana. So that university can do certificate program, online program for the Nisarga Shikshak. If we can protect Nisarga Shikshak and Nisarga Rakshak, your point is very valid. What is that we need to do? Because government will come out with action plan, which I did, as you correctly asking me. But on ground to protect it, we need people. And if you look at it, Scandinavia has the highest environment protection. Why? Because there is the highest environment awareness. When I was in 1998 Minister of Environment and Forest, I started a program for environment education. So I changed even taught one subject in NCRT. Also integrated environment into all of the subjects because we didn't want to increase the burden on the student. That one more subject means one more burden on their back. We have to carry more books. So this all we can do. But this is and some new program we are launching. I hope all of you can also join in and let us together try to protect environment by involving people themselves.
Sir, this is a great idea which you mentioned about Nisarga Rakshak and then Nisarga Sikshak. And what I'm sure Dr. Girish Gandhi and Avi Foundation also believes in is education. And educating each and every class of citizens of our India is very important, right from kindergarten to graduation level or post-graduation level. And when there is a person who is teaching about practicality of nature, of the environment, this will be immensely benefited to a lot of citizens in India. And I think this opportunity which the ministry would give to us NGOs would be highly appreciated, and it will benefit lakhs and lakhs of citizens of India. And in a follow-up question, Mr. Jatin would like to ask you something, and then I will change the subject to man-animal conflict and wildlife and humans.
Thank you, Jerry sir. So one quick question which I wanted to ask you regarding something which I was studying lately. I was studying that forest and agriculture go hand in hand, but in recent years we have seen that in order to sustain agriculture, we are using deforestation. Like we are clearing the land, clearing the forests, and on that land we are planting agriculture. Is this a right concept, sir? And does this have any bad impact on the entire ecology, consequently falling onto the farmers' lives?
Yeah, absolutely right. As I said, land use change itself causes greenhouse gas emission. Greenhouse gas emission in turn causes climate change. Climate change affects everybody. So in fact, what Nilesh Khandekar was asking me, what is the best way? If you address climate change properly, then all environmental issues, Nilesh, right, what you're asking me, will get addressed because everything converges into climate change some way or the other. So land use change is a problem. We should not do that. In fact, in my opinion, India should prepare, and this I had written an article when there was a very big fight going on in West Bengal, when the Tatas wanted to start a car factory, and Mamata Banerjee was agitating. So I had said in Times of India's op-ed, use remote sensing and find out areas which will be reserved for agriculture for all times. And that land you can irrigate also. So that irrigation, if you lose irrigated land for industry, that means you are losing money but irrigated also. Right. But industry also need land. So we decide some land for industry, some land for forest, some land for agriculture, some land for housing, some land for infrastructure. Because we are only 2.4% of the land of the world. Only 2.4%. So if you don't do this proper land management, how are you going to do it? So I think this is what we need to do. And you are absolutely right. Clearing forest and doing agriculture is not a good idea at all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Can I ask one question? Hello? Hello? Hello?
बोलिए हम बोलते जाइए.
Can I ask one question?
Sir, can we please take your question at the end of the program? You can ask. Go ahead. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Suresh ji, namaskar. Vijay Javandia here.
Vijay ji, bola.
You have said that farmers must be given market. My simple question is this, that when 80% population is not having a purchasing power of 2 square meals, how can there will be market if production is increased? You have given very good example of sugar cane and sugar factories, but sugar cane and sugar factory farmers are not surviving on value addition of sugar and market. They are surviving with the policy support of having export subsidy, having import duty on sugar, having a facility of without interest loan is given for buffer stocking of sugar, and buffer stocking of sugar is never called a holding. I think this type of support is needed for all other farmers. And you have rightly said that 14% of the GDP is of agriculture. But why GDP of service sector is increasing to 60%? It is just because of the monetary policy and the minimum wages given by the pay commissions. So if this type of policies are going to be there, how can Annadata will survive in this system?
Vijay, you are right. Your name is Vijay, so you'll always be right. You'll always have, you'll victorious. I am just saying, try to understand that when you are talking about poor people in India, most of the poor people in India are farmers. So if you give good price to farmers' produce, the beneficiary of that will be a farmer. And that's how the poverty will get reduced, or poverty will get removed over a period of time. You cannot remove poverty unless you make farmers better off than what they are today. Most of the poor people in the country are farmers themselves or farm laborers. So changing farming economy is a prerequisite for removing poverty of India. I think one of the days Vijayji will have a very detailed discussion on this, but this is a very important issue. I am not disputing it, but we'll have a proper discussion on this. I think we'll go to the next question. Actually, our program was half an hour, but I cannot go, so I will answer all the questions. So go ahead with that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Questions.
Vijayji will discuss one day. I'll come to Nagpur to meet you.
Oh, thank you, sir.
That's so nice of you, Mr. Prabhuji. And thank you for taking up a participant's question also. That is very graceful of you. And you are extending your time as well. I will directly come to a very hot burning topic, that is man-animal conflict. We see that farmers on the fringes of forest who are doing their agriculture right beside the forest they become a part of man-animal conflict, and even so that the standing crops of these farmers are destroyed by wild animals. So what policies can the central government bring in to benefit both the humans as well as the wild animals and not harm any one of them?
Ajay, you tell me something.
Yes.
To answer your question, who was born first, animal or man?
Sir, we want
in this planet. No, I'm just saying.
Yes.
So, the animal was born first,
right,
and then we intruded on his area.
correct.
See, Daryl, you have your own house,
Yes.
your own consulting room. If I enter your house and start with you, it is not my house and trying to fight with you. It is my fault, not your fault. So man-animal conflict is first start with man, not with animal. Because it was the animal kingdom in which we entered as a later on. Our population, human population, has multiplied over a period of time. From 1 billion, we have become now less than a few hundred million, or even less than 100 million, some only about few centuries ago, we have now become 7.6, 7.7 billion. So that is the cause of the problem. Even in India, if you look at it, our population is now 1.4 billion, close to 1.37 maybe. That population has caused problem on the forest, because if the population was about, say, 30% of what it is today when it was an independent country, there was not man-animal conflict as there today. So the best way to address man-animal conflict, of course, to control population. That is one part, but that's a broader issue. Second part is that some areas we must give reserved for forest, and therefore the animal own habitat. We should therefore make sure that farmers should be compensated. If there is going to be a damage that is caused to the farmers because of animals, we should compensate them. We should give them the money, but we should not allow man to fight animal for no fault of the animal. We should try to give him compensation And that is what, even I remember as 1998, I started this program of reducing man-animal conflict, giving compensation to farmers. But I think this is a very important question.
Thank you, sir. I mean, it is coming from a union minister that there should be a perfect balance between human interference in animal-dominated landscape, and there should be compensation for any undue damages to the crops done by wild animals. And you took the side of animals. That is really very grateful, and I really appreciate your efforts or your words when you say that animals are more important than humans, and that animals were there in this earth, on this earth, way before humans ever did. So this balance should be always maintained, and I really appreciate that union minister or the person in power is feeling these kind of. So coming to another question, sir, about energy now, about the electricity. Mr. Nilesh would be asking you the next question about renewable energy and the conventional source of energies which we use today.
Thank you, Jeril. Sir, also you were Union Minister of Power. So you must be knowing that we predominantly use thermal power for our electrical requirement, which destroys a considerable amount of Indian biodiversity each year. What benefits can the government provide for the promotion of renewable sources of energy like wind, water, and solar energy?
Actually, we are doing. We are going to be the world's largest renewable energy producer in the next few years' time. Already, we are working on 1 lakh megawatts of solar, 75,000 megawatts of wind, and of course, hydro is. We already had a hydro, that is the water energy. So we already had that. So India will be one of the largest producer of renewable energy in the world. A lot of incentives are being given. So I think we are changing energy mix. What you're asking, a very important point, is changing energy mix. How can we bring down the thermal, that is basically coal, which is more than 50% today, and increase the share. So coal will remain a mainstay for some more time to come. But if we increase the other source of energy like renewable, automatically the percentage of coal will go down, and that is what we are doing.
So
Thank you, sir.
Summing up the entire program, just last 2 questions. One is related to my medical sciences, that is human sciences, that today we are seeing that there is increase in use of chemicals, insecticides and pesticides in our farming, day-to-day farming. Also, there is increase in the percentage of cancer patients and other health-related problems. Do you think there is a correlation between the use of chemicals and the increase in number of cancer patients in India? And if yes, can you please elaborate why it might be the reason? And what can we do about it?
See, I cannot give a conclusive answer whether there is a relationship between the two. But obviously, lifestyle changes is certainly responsible for the type of diseases that we are getting. If we are given corona, it's related to that, because actually speaking, we are saying that that virus came from animal to man. And that is the issue that we are talking about, that animals don't have habitat. There's going to be more and more interaction between animal and man, and therefore this type of viruses will come from animal to man, and which is going to cause huge damage. So this is not a first pandemic, and this is certainly not the last pandemic. We'll get more pandemics in to come. So lifestyle change is definitely responsible, because earlier we are living differently, we are eating differently, the chemical use was very less, but something is definitely causing the change in our lifestyle, which is resulting into diseases more. Now to change that, see, we have other very big challenges which we have discussed earlier, that with a limited land, we have to produce more food, because land is limited 2.4%. Now, if you want to do that, then farmers will also expect that my crop should not be lost to some pest or insect. So we have to use insecticides and pesticides. They come in the chemical form. So judicious use is very important, rather than saying absence of it. I think some form or the other compromise we already done in our life, that we have to do it, but some judicious use of it, ensuring that what will not cause undue damage has to be used, and that is what we really need to do. So therefore, I think by saying we'll avoid it completely, if you can use it judiciously, by proper trials and methods we put in place, proper protocols put in place, that will take care of it properly.
Thank you so much, sir. One last question which we would like to ask from our side as NGOs or as volunteers of environment. What can we as environmental NGO do to help the government for the future generations to come? And how can we contribute to a greater nation building and give our time and efforts to you for helping you out?
You know, I got 3-4 ideas on that. One I just mentioned about Nisarga Rakshak and Nisarga Shikshan. The one is we just started a bamboo forum. First time India integrated bamboo forum, because in 1998 again I had launched the bamboo program first time in India. And there's a lot of bamboo even in Vidarbha. Farmers don't get any value out of it because bamboo itself, somebody can use it at a time of election or somebody can use it during riots, but that's not a right use of bamboo. If we can do value added products from bamboo, farmers will get right price. And that value added product can be furniture, value added can be designed material, many things. So I suggest we can join hands in bamboo, Nisarga Rakshak, Nisarga Shikshan. Third thing we are trying to do is create NGOs who are working in rural development, their national network. Achha, this is not government. What I'm telling you, government is supporting it, but we are trying to work it outside the government, because then if you take it government, then some bureaucrats will come, some will say this, whether you have GR, whether you have PR, whether you have TRN, all this will go away. So we ultimately are saying that all the rural development organizations, if they can create their own network, we can share best practices. Can you imagine what Girish Bhai has done in his own way in Vidarbha? If it is known to others in Bihar, people will get motivated. He could do this Bandrai movement in Nagpur and adjoining areas. Why cannot I do it in Mungir district? Or I cannot do it in Visakhapatnam? So we are trying to create informal network of all the rural development institutions in India so that we can work together. We are also working cooperative development forum to revitalize the cooperative, but that's a different thing because cooperatives are registered into. But NGOs, we can work like this, and I think I will keep in touch with you, and we'll all join hands. And I can tell you something. He gave an example of Vinoba Bhave initially. You know, Vinoba Bhave, you can draw inspiration from him for anything. In fact, I remember I was the only MP when Lok Sabha TV channel was launched. When I was the only MP was doing a program on a talk show in Lok Sabha TV, because Mr. Somnath Chatterjee was the speaker. He said at least Lok Sabha TV should be something Lok Sabha MP should do. I was in Lok Sabha that time. So I started a program called Top Shot. It became very successful. In the Top Shot 1 hour interactive session like this, I requested Nirmala Deshpande, she was a Rajya Sabha MP, that I would like to interview you. She said, no. Interview, etc. Surejji, you are my brother. She used to love me, but I cannot do it for you. I said, Nirmala Tai, I convinced her, but she was not willing. I said, Nirmala Tai, we'll record it. If you say, this is my word to you. If you say it should not be telecast, we'll completely destroy that recording. The first question I asked her was this, what Girish Bhai just mentioned. I said, can you imagine that people are fighting, killing each other for a small piece of land? How could Vinoba Bhave get thousands of acres of land from all over the world, all over the country, just without any, only by persuasive power, not by force. Naxalites are trying to grab land, they are not succeeding. Vinoba Bhave succeeded in getting thousands of acres of land, lakhs of acres of land. I asked this question and she answered that question, and then this is what exactly. So Vinoba Bhave is an inspiration to all of us. For NGOs, Vinoba Bhave, he was not holding any position in the government. He never ever contested an election. He never went out and asked for Padma Shri, Padma Award, nothing. He never asked for government money. Indira Gandhi used to go to him, and of course he was criticized for that. But Vinoba Bhave, in fact, I don't know, Jaril, I will request all of you. Vinoba Ji, when he was lodged in Dhule jail, there were a lot of other freedom fighters. A lot of freedom fighters were there. So they were saying they are all getting bored what to do. So Vinoba Ji said, I will teach you Gita. These lectures on Gita, and one week he used to talk about one Gita there, one day. You should read this. I have not read anything better. In fact, Mahatma Gandhi used to call him spiritual guru. And then for Mahatma Gandhi, he has written a small little book on Vedas. in a very small little way to understand what is there. So he was the ultimate of spirituality as well as social movement. We as NGOs, you're asking me, we should draw inspiration from such people. What can be done? And no institution can ever survive which doesn't have spiritual backing. Not religious backing, spiritual. Spirituality is different than religion. Religion is little more ritualistic. We are talking about spiritualistic, which is linking our own self to the ultimate.
Sureshji, I will add, Jerry, you listen it.
Imagine
There
our
is
NGOs
a-
can do that wonderful job. And Jerry, actually do it together. Hello.
determination in youths is lacking day by day. And you should forget, if you want to be a NGO, purely NGO, you should forget about the government. There is no government as such. You should work at your own. Don't look for how much grant you get from government, how they recognize your work. You should do. And don't expect anything from the society. Kennedy was telling, forget about what country can do for you. You think what you can do for the country. And I think it will be a very important for your generation. Because in future, there will be very few persons who will recognize your work in the society. We were fortunate. We were recognized. It may be small, on the small level, but some recognition we could get. But in future, I don't know. Because people, thankless job. People consider this service as a thankless job. So you should determine to forget about government and do the work.
Under your guidance,
Right. Sorry, just one small point. I will share with you, Girish bhai, in the next few days, few weeks, about these various possibilities of working together, as you mentioned. And through Girish bhai, we'll reach out to all of you. I'll come to Nagpur one of the days, or we can organize a webinar. Let us take every district, let us identify good people in different areas. Somebody is interested in water, will take. Let us not convert people. If interested in water, let him work in water only. So
Yes.
we'll take water, we'll for district, then we'll request him to find people in taluka and then village. Same thing we'll do it for forest. People interested in that.
We shall organize.
Tell you, if we think on our own initiatives, our own strength, we'll try to do it. I'll share with you. Achha, one last point, generally, with your permission.
yes, sir.
I think
Please.
one of the participants, Mr. Sinha is asking me a question on
Yes, one
on the
question.
chat. So he is asking me, why protect only tigers and not any other animal? Let me explain to you. Very good question. Very good question. All animals are important. Tiger is at the apex of the food chain. If tiger is alive, that means the entire food chain below is alive. Because that means tiger cannot survive without other animals. So if other animals go away, tiger will go away. So if you are protecting tiger, that means you are protecting the entire food chain, because these are the apex of the food chain. For example, take of India, it presumes that all other institutions below him are functioning. So this is like a apex of the food chain we are trying to protect, and therefore we should make sure that tiger. So therefore, Project Tiger. That doesn't mean we don't care about other animals, but that is the ultimate of the food chain.
I think tiger is a
But I am very, very happy, honestly, the kind of motivated people all of you are. So Jatin and all my friends, I will tell you, doctor, we'll be in touch regularly.
Thank you,
You
sir.
call me anytime, and anything I can do, we'll do it. As Girish bhai just gave a very good advice, like what Minobaji said in the Pearls of Wisdom in small little way, which he narrated for Mahatma Gandhi, and he published a small book about various Vedas. What Girish bhai just said, let us do something for the country. What we can do,
Correct.
without
Sir, as I would want to say a few words about you as well as Dr. Gandhi, that you are our, and under you we would.
I'm telling you, when that is what Gita Kar do. But let us together, and I am very, very happy about this program. Honestly, I think you are recorded it, right? You are recording
Yes,
the program.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
You
sir.
send me a YouTube, because we should try to put it on. We try to circulate it to many people. This was one
Sure,
of the best question answer session, I think, and this was a good format. That I didn't have to make a speech. You asked me question. I think we'll go ahead like this any number of times you want.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
This is a new generation, Surajji, which want to do something. So today they have blessed by you. It will be a great achievement in their life. Thank you very much, Surajji.
We'll work together, and I can promise you, we'll really, really do something in our own way